What's up guys, welcome back. I just finished off Ky'veza, the Season 3 Delve Challenge boss on hard mode on my first toon, and I'm going to give you all of the advice I can for taking on the boss early season. So the fight design here is wildly different from Zekvir and the Underpin. In this fight there are no ads to kill, no shields to break, no dispels, no interrupts, no boss healing, not much to do in the way of boss positioning, and no bombs or items to interact with. So trading in all of those other types of mechanics, the player is just dodging one-shots for however long the fight lasts. The boss also does much less melee damage, though her attack speed is a lot faster, though we're still seeing that armor proficiency melee damage scaling. Additionally, tanks are not taking increased melee damage, but just like the Underpin, they have to deal the full amount of boss health. And healers again have less overall boss health, about 75% of what tanks and healers have to deal with. That said, currently tanks and healers, if you're running Bran as a DPS, don't have things so easy that it's an absolute gimme to use one of those specs. The boss only has 4 abilities and she does them in a specific order for the entire duration of the fight. Additionally, the perimeter of the room does creep in after every sequence of abilities. This does stop at a certain point, and you're not necessarily needing the whole room to deal with any of the mechanics. I think it's more of a psychological play to cause anxiety in the player over the course of the fight. And there's one change with Bran that I don't like very much at all. It does not appear that you can res him by interacting with his corpse. You just have to wait that 30-second countdown, or you can full heal him to bring him back up. Now early in the week on normal mode, I tested out Bran as a tank on my Death Knight, and I was able to interact with him and res him. I feel like that might just be a tank Bran thing. You'll probably see people talking about how Bran always dies and other people talking about how Bran never dies, and that's a specific function of what role you have Bran set as. Bran's DPS cooldown, the Hammer Griffin, where he jumps on the Griffin, becomes stationary and just throws hammers over time, has a really bad conflict with the boss's Nether Rift ability. Nether Rift will spawn a portal on the ground, one under you and one under Bran. If he's not off his Griffin and out of that portal location before the thing manifests, then he's going to die very quickly to that damage over time. And then he'll stay in that spot until that next set of portals adds the 30-second timer. Fortunately, when he does res from the timer, he does have his auto turtle and he'll run out and he won't die a second time. That seems to not be an issue. When this happens, it's on you to best form that triangle that you can still stand in the middle of, using the unbanned portal, Bran's portal, and your portal. So you just have to make that adjustment there. Though he only does this as a DPS, this assumes you're doing your own self-healing, so it's not the biggest issue in the world, and there is not like a hard end rage, the room goes completely dark, anything. It just extends the length of the fight. And don't listen to what other people are saying about this. He does not necessarily activate his Griffin whenever you activate your damage cooldowns. He can do it when you use cooldowns, he can do it when you bloodlust, but he can do it at the start of the fight even if you've not pressed any of these buttons. I would definitely move Bran a little bit further into the room so that he doesn't drop his Griffin portal at the very entrance of the room. That's a very tough triangle to form. If you're a tank or a healer, you're probably good to have Bran DPS, and if you're a DPS, you're probably going to have Bran heal unless you're a Ret Paladin, maybe a Shadow Priest, maybe even DPS Death Knights. But even then, I would say 680, 690 item level or higher unless you're super proficient with the class. Regardless of Bran's role, I think you need to use the Hatterang. In my first kill, the ability itself did 240 million damage to the boss and had about 3 minutes of uptime on the various debuffs. And at rank 1, everything in the utility curio section looked pretty bad to me. I went with the Battered Aegis. This is 3% damage output. Keep in mind, every time you die with the Battered Aegis, you need to go back to your curio selection and toggle it to something else and then switch it back on. Wipe the stacking damage and healing reduction. So we'll talk about the order of the fight and then show the fight in full. Before we get to that, if you haven't done so, be sure to subscribe to the channel for further Ky'veza and solo challenge guides, and leave a comment below if you have any questions on the video or what you think of the fight so far. So the first thing you're going to see when you pull the fight is Nexus daggers. The boss will telegraph 5 lines of daggers and then repeat that with a shadow clone in different spots of the room 6 different times. This is early on. I haven't identified a set pattern for exactly how this works, and I'm not really sure there is one, but I would say general rules to make this as easy as possible is have a speed boost available, preemptively move away from the boss. This isn't too difficult as the boss abilities are in the same sequence every time. And I would just keep moving around the edge of the room, trying to create as much distance as possible from the previous sets of daggers. You can get away with minor sidestepping, but I found that the overlaps keep happening at a frequency that just makes it feel like the mechanic is closing in on you and you have less and less room each time. But certainly making a big movement away from the boss so that first set of daggers doesn't conflict too much with the next 2 or 3 sets will buy you a little bit of space. And sometimes those subsequent daggers will overlap or be parallel with the previous set, so you're not having to do too much movement. But throughout the course of the fight, you are going to have some difficult moments. I felt this was the toughest mechanic for me to deal with, but I did start having more success as I moved away from the boss a little bit before it started and just kept moving. Having a speed boost certainly helps here. You might not have one for every set. If you've already preemptively moved a good distance away from the boss, you might be able to save a movement speed ability for like that next set of daggers. You're making a decision in like a half a second time here. But if you are very close to the boss when that first set goes out, maybe that's a good time to burn a movement cooldown. They come out at the very beginning and then every 30 seconds. After that first set of daggers, you're going to get your first nether rift. This will spawn 3 portals. One under you, one under Bran, and then one in a free spot in the room. You and Bran will be dropping your portals and the other 2 free spots, creating a triangle that you and Bran can stand in the middle of so that you don't get pulled into any single portal. If it's not perfect, that's okay. You can use a movement speed to run against it. And if you have 2 portals right next to each other and then one solo portal out in kind of Narnia, you want to go hang out by that solo portal because those 2 portals will have a greater pulling effect than that single portal. Bran typically reacts very quickly to this mechanic, and you do have time to see where he goes and then put yours in that final open spot. I do think they give a generous amount of time for this, and with how quickly we have to react to the rest of the fight, this was the least of my complaints. So after successfully forming the triangle of any size, you'll be in the middle with Bran and you're going to take a bunch of damage over time. So you'll have to either rotate defenses or massive self-healing, or make sure you at least pick up a couple of the Bran potions. After dropping your portal, you do have a second or 2 to react, so that's probably the best time to pick up a couple of the Bran potions. The potion hot is only 10 seconds, but even if that heal over time covers half of that unavoidable damage, you'll probably be okay. Just make sure not to dip under 10% health because the boss will just auto kill you at that point. Even if you heal yourself up past that point, the boss has already made the decision that they're going to execute you and you just die. Then once you have survived the nether rift, you have dark massacre. On normal mode, dark massacre is 3 shadows, and on hard mode, you're going to get 6. The shadows will spawn, target you, and then charge at you. You have to be facing them, and it's a pretty strict requirement. You can't be off by more than a couple degrees or you're just going to get one shot. And this is another mechanic that you have to react very quickly to, but after seeing it a bunch, you'll be able to identify where that next rush is coming, even if you didn't memorize the order in which they spawned. As the clones spawn, there's a black and blue graphic that shows them where they're actually spawning in. And once that portal visual fully dissolves, that clone will then charge you. This is a mechanic I think you have to do a whole lot before you can get very comfortable with it. Additionally, you'll also get a red line effect that shows you this guy is charging next. I think if you're reacting solely to that red line, you're going to have a pretty tough time. So as you're getting hit by any given charge, you should do your best to keep an eye on whichever spawned right after that guy, or whichever shroud is dropping, and just be ready to move your camera. What you'll see I do in my video is I line up with the very first one, and then I just start backing away from it. These things will kind of spawn a little bit of all over, but the more I back up, the less room they have to spawn on my sides or behind me. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but it just keeps as many of them in front of me as possible, so I'm only having to move, you know, like a 30 degree here, 30 degree there. Also, keeping the boss just off center of the room felt like it helped keep those clones on the short side of the room, spawning just between the boss and the closest portion of the shadow perimeter. Not a guarantee, just my best current advice. Dark Massacre is also a good bit of damage. You're going to get 6 of these and they hit you for about 500,000 each. That's 3 million damage on top of the boss's auto attacks, and those are going to be anywhere between 500,000 and 750,000 damage. So again, do your best to have a brand potion on you here, a self heal of some kind. And very quickly after that last shadow clone has charged into you, you're going to get another set of daggers. So this is where I try to separate myself from the boss as quickly as possible. That set of daggers will go out, and then you're going to get another set of nether portals, which is a little bit of a break, honestly. You'll drop those portals, get some good DPS time on the boss, have to CD or heal through the pulse damage, get another Dark Massacre, make some distance right after for a set of daggers. And then as that set of daggers finishes up, you're going to get Invoke the Shadows, which is known as the guessing game or the cup game or the red queen, whatever. So the ability cadence is basically daggers, nether rift, dark massacre, daggers, nether rift, dark massacre, daggers, and then Invoke the Shadows, the guessing game. Daggers is always going to be 30 seconds apart since it's just before and just after the guessing game. At this point, the boss spawns 5 shadows on the purple points that border the runes in the middle of the room. After they spawn, you get about 1 second to see the open purple spot that the boss will go to. She'll also give away her initial position with a chat bubble that says which is real. That's her. And she also begins her movement about a half second before the others start moving, only on the initial dash. So they are going to play musical chairs and switch positions 12 times on hard mode. Number 1, I would blink a couple times to make sure you don't have dry eyes when this thing goes out. And this might sound dumb, but you can either track the boss by looking directly at her, or you can look at the center of the room and kind of track her in your peripheral. I think the periphery strat has some merit to it, and I would recommend trying it if you're having some issues. It feels like you can definitely lose the boss kind of easily, especially if you get in that scenario where each one of the clones moves across the very middle to its exact opposite spot. At that point, it feels like your kind of brain can explode a little bit because you don't really get to track one target through the middle at any given time. And while this mechanic is faster on hard mode than it is on normal, this is another one that I think you just have to see a lot. I think a lot of people are going to be frustrated because they'll go in and they'll see this mechanic, they'll see daggers, they'll see massacre and say, oh my god, I can't react to that. But take my word for it, the more you see it, the more accustomed you will be to tracking it. At one point, there was a weak aura that just told you whichever one was real, like the barrel game from Legion World Quest. I'm glad they got rid of that thing. That is absolutely cheating. That is raider behavior. We don't like to see that here. And then after that cup game, you got 5 or 6 seconds to DPS the boss, at which point new daggers comes out, and then you get your nether portal, dark massacre, daggers, nether portal, dark massacre, daggers, cup game. And I think that nether rift mechanic is really another point in the fight where you're allowed to catch your breath a little. Yeah, it's big incoming damage. Yeah, you want to make sure you're picking up some brand potions or have self-healing or a plan of some sort. But compared to dodging 6 or more one-shots in like a 6-second period, I think it's a little bit more relaxed. That nether portal comes out, you know you can blast the boss for, like 15 seconds before you have to start dodging massacres. And really, that's the fight. You have to do that sequence over and over and over. I think this is a fight a lot of people are going to give up on very soon versus like Zekvir or the Underpin. Because in those fights, it does feel like you have a little bit more downtime, time to catch your breath. This fight just feels like you have to be locked in for the entire duration of it. I think that's Blizzard's direct response to people complaining about RNG in the previous fights. They'll say, okay, we'll limit the RNG, but we'll make them stay locked in for the entire duration. While gear doesn't help you on one-shots, it does help reduce the number of total loops you're going to have to do in the fight. And it is going to help you tank the Nether Rift phase and Dark Massacre phase a little bit better than right now. Like at 670 item level, even if you're doing all the mechanics perfectly, you're going to have a plan for the Nether Rifts. You're going to have to make sure you're picking up brand potions if you're a DPS. I think it is very demanding and is largely why I decided to go Blood Death Knight for my first kill. It's just one less thing I had to do. You have a 3-button rotation. You can always just death strike your health back up. But I think this fight, more than the other two, no matter when you do it, you're going to have to play very well for several minutes straight. If your gear's to the point where you're doing the fight in 6 minutes, that's still 4 loops of abilities you had to do. You had to play very well to do that. And I do think this fight is, I wouldn't say the worst design necessarily, I would just say it's the least designed fight of the previous two. I think Blizzard put in good work on Zekvir and the Underpin. I think both fights had a good amount going on, both fights were very different, and Blizzard couldn't really escape complaints and accusations of RNG, or I shouldn't have to do this, or X or Y or Z, or I just want to dodge mechanics. I think they heard that a lot. I think they heard, I just want to dodge mechanics and be able to play the game, right? And then they gave us this fight, and they said, have at it. I think outside of extreme examples like DPS not needing healers at higher gear, or tanks being able to do the fight with brand DPS over a 12-minute period, I think for the most part, it doesn't matter what class you are more than it is, can you handle these mechanics? I think before you get to the point where you're preemptively moving for daggers, and you're able to read the Dark Massacre well, you are having to react in an insanely short period of time, faster than, frankly, any mythic mechanics would have you react. Progress just kind of felt like you could wipe on any set of daggers at any given time. Dark Massacre felt like something that you could get a lot better at reading and preparing for. Daggers just felt like you're getting some distance from the boss and then having to rely on your quarter-second reaction time, right? I'm not sure how many people are going to like this one. I don't think it's a challenge a lot of people are looking for in WoW. I think if you doubled the amount of time that people had to react to daggers and even Dark Massacre, you would still have a very demanding fight. And I don't think beating the fight necessarily validates your opinion one way or the other. This is just how I feel. I feel like players can progress Zekvir and Underpin and gradually make progress and not really lose that progress on subsequent attempts. Sure, while learning bosses, you can just die to stuff that you don't necessarily die to every time. Like this morning, I wiped on it at 90%, at 10%, 50%, 80%, 40%, because it's just when you got hit by a dagger. I think daggers are the biggest offender. If you were to change anything, maybe give people a little bit of leeway on that, or create a minimum distance that the dagger guys would spawn from you so you had a little bit more room to react. When one spawns right on top of you as you're running away from another set of daggers, you really feel like, well, do I keep running through it and hopefully I get through it in 0.2 seconds? Or do I change course? Or do I plant my feet and just try to make micro movements? Or having you like precog the mechanic, knowing that by the time you've committed to it and gotten to it, it will have passed you by, so it will then be a safe area. Kind of felt like that sometimes. I do think that's all I got, at least for this first one. I do wish you the best of luck. I think tank and healer still might be the way to go early on so you can have brand DPS. But at that point, you are going to have to deal with brand killing himself on portals here and there. I think DPS with Bran as a healer is perfectly viable, but you do have to make sure you're picking up potions between the Nether Rift pulse damage and the Dark Massacre, and they happen so frequently that it's unlikely you're going to have an answer for every single one. If you're DPS with a couple of tank trinkets, I would throw those in the defensive rotation and just try to use one button per, even if you have Bran healing. But I'm sure those unavoidable damage periods will get better over time as we get a little bit more gear from Season 3. That said, I wish you the best of luck. We're going to play out the fight in full for the rest of the video. Make sure to sub to the channel to stay in the loop for future classes and potential future strats as the season goes on. Like the video if you liked it, share with your friends, comment below, let me know how you're doing. And as always, thanks for watching. I hope you all have a great rest of your day or evening. Peace.
peeled. At least I think. Hard to tell with these clothes. Either way, she's nae bragging anymore.